Just a little consideration on the legal side. Disclaimer, I'm not a legal person, so don't shoot on me. Just a little summary, introduction and motivation why we are talking about autonomous agents. A definition we are trying to do, a little bit of taxonomy, a definition of cyberspace, that's the environment where autonomous agents live and act. Some scenarios of their applications in cyber offense. By cyber offense, I mean here what is defined as cyber network exploitation and cyber network attack, both of them. Some consideration on the legal landscape and how autonomous agents are going to fit into it, and a bit of a conclusion. Sorry for that. So, introduction and motivation. Why we are talking about autonomous agents? They are not here. They are not here still, but they will be in a few years, I bet. All the technological precursors are there. Artificial intelligence techniques. Sorry for that. Artificial intelligence techniques that are going to be incorporated into autonomous agents are here. And also the computational powers are here to do something. Autonomous agents can be physical, meaning robots in a simple word, or software agents. We already see some physical autonomous agents that could fit the definition I will give. For instance, self-driving cars, initiated by the DARPA project, very importantly, a few years ago. That's a defense US DoD agency, so military application can be obvious. But we have not seen still software agents. So I would like to do a definition or propose a definition of what an autonomous agent really is. So an agent that's valid both for physical and software agents. What are its characteristics? An autonomous agent is strictly associated with its environment. So it's built with an environment in mind. Our physical environment, in the case of physical agents like robots, or the cyberspace. An agent has to interact with the environment. So you have to sense the environment and influence the environment, both inputs and outputs. An autonomous agent acts towards a goal. It has an agenda in a way. In particular, if you're talking autonomous agents developed for warfare operations, it has a target or a mission. And in autonomous agents, we already are used to something like advanced persistent threats, software that has a continuity of action into time, and also autonomous agents must have a continuity of action in time. So the pursuing of its agenda has to be done during a period of time, a sustained period of time, not spot on. And most importantly, an agent should possess an adequate model of its environment, and it should be aware of its environment, including its goal, and including how far it is from its goal at any given moment. So it has to have some kind internally of performance measure or utility function, as it is said in the AI sector, that is also used to express its preferences regarding its possible actions to do. And maybe most important of all, an agent must possess the capability to learn during its action. The capability of learn is useful to perfect or gain understanding of its environment, the environment where it is going to operate, and also to modify over time this model of the world, and possibly also its goals and preferences. In the military context, that poses some problems because the goals of an autonomous agent in a cyber offense activity should be clearly stated. Coming to our own favorite case history, Stuxnet. Does Stuxnet qualify? No. I postulate that it doesn't qualify still as an autonomous agent. It does not have any representation of its environment. It's not aware of the network, of how the network it is running on is made of, its topology, etc. It does not present a continuity in time. It does not have any learning capability. It's not able to learn more about its environment and its target. It does not perform an autonomous target evaluation or selection. It is capable in part of selection systems to infect or to target according to a set of targeting criteria. Quite complicated, but the set is fixed at programming time. It's not subject to expansion. While one of the characteristics of an autonomous agent will be that target evaluation and selection will be partly autonomously. So it will be done at running time, as we say, or on site. Taxonomy. Proposed taxonomy, well, at our level, we have on one side, physical agents, robots, and the other side, software agents, softbots. Different environments, our world for physical robots, and the cyberspace. And we'll see something about cyberspace later on for softbots. Talking of software, autonomous agents, we propose a classification based on 2 coordinates, yielding 4 cases, classical matrix 2 by 2. And this is proposed to be easily incorporated into policies and doctrines. 1 coordinate is the role and purpose of the agent. So computer network exploitation, simplifying it is information gathering and intelligence. Okay? Forgive me for the oversimplification. And computer network attack, real cyber attacks, meaning targeting networks to achieve disruption, destruction of data, or manipulation of data in any way. On the one side. On the other side, on the other axis, we have architecture. An agent can be monolithic, single piece of software, or decentralized. For the decentralized autonomous agents, we postulate something like a swarm, a set of small, decentralized pieces of software acting independently but communicating with each other. And that can be used, for instance, to build a next generation botnet, which is going to be much more resilient than current botnets, as we see, because current botnets have a command and control structure somewhere on the internet. If you kill the command and control structure, you kill the botnet effectively. So in decentralized agents, the intelligence is distributed among many, many simpler components, all similar or very similar, acting in concert and communicating with each other. Ideal environment is mobile devices for those, tablets, phones, etc. Let's talk a bit of cyberspace, very peculiar environment where autonomous agents, software autonomous agents are going to operate. And we're using some categories from the artificial intelligence field to characterize the cyberspace and how and why it is a difficult environment for autonomous agents. 1, it is partially observable. What does it mean? The agents can have, at the best of times, knowledge of only a tiny fraction of it, obviously. It's deterministic and discrete, but it's very complex in many ways. Cyberspace yesterday was defined as having many layers: the physical layer, the technical layer, and the people layer and social layer. In a presentation yesterday at a legal seminar. That's only part of the complexity. Just the physical layer is very complex. It's obviously adversarial. including, for instance, enemy operators, enemy and foreign agents, and conventional security software like firewalls, IDS, etc. During the course of its operation, obviously, an autonomous agent maybe can be forced to front other autonomous agents, engage in cyber defense, or even, as we saw, in automatic counterattacks. So, it is a dynamic environment. It can and will change during these operations of an autonomous agent, during its mission, just because the mission is sustained in time by definition. One thing about autonomous agents, when we talk about some scenarios about their applications. In cyber warfare, theoretically at least, because many people say cyber warfare will not happen, has not happened, etc. But theoretically, cyber warfare offense has a place in strategy, and usually it can be preferable, also from an economic point of view. It can be easier to attack first, especially if the attackers, who is going to attack, country or a nation state, has a lower target profile. We saw yesterday that maybe US and countries like Estonia has a high target profile because they are highly developed in ICT sector. They have e-governments, they have networks, etc. So the cost of a cyber attack is very low compared to other forms of warfare, so it can be very attractive for undeveloped country in ICT. First scenario for autonomous agents is reconnaissance. This can be low level, for instance, automatic discovery of vulnerabilities. Major part of the cost of Stuxnet is finding the vulnerabilities and the exploits that are incorporated into Stuxnet. If an agent can be deployed against a network and it could find automatically the vulnerabilities of that network, that could lower the cost still of an attack and can build intelligence for the attackers. On a higher level, the gathering of intelligence, the structure and topology and details of the network, up to user details and also user profiles, social activities on social networks, etc. And beyond that, there is actual penetration, computer cyber attack proper. This can be with a target already selected in advance by the developers, or developing the recon phase. And autonomous agents can have, in the future, the capability of selecting its own targets to some extent, and we will need to see to what extent. Advantage, again, no need for pre-programmed methods of penetrating the system, but autonomous agents will analyze the target, select the points of vulnerability, and also develop the exploits to use them. There are possible speculated methods to model possible vulnerabilities and exploits. Better detail in the paper. I'm not going into too many details here. Also, the internal representation of the network that an autonomous agents will have will help agents to be resilient, seen from the attacker perspective, by allowing them to prevent and react to countermeasures. And swarms is a particular scenario postulated for decentralized agents. Sets of cooperating autonomous agents, simpler than a monolithic one, that can, for instance, form a whole kind of botnet, where you don't need centralized command and control structures. Individual agents can cooperate, for instance, by sharing information among themselves. some botnet of this kind would be very difficult to disable, because without a single command and control structure, each agent would have to be separately individuated and disabled, sanitized. Some consideration on how autonomous agents can fit into the legal landscape. Talking about the use ad bellum is concerned only with nation states. So why do we speak about use ad bellum? Because already Stuxnet, which is quite a complex piece of software, is very probably developed, or could have been developed very probably only by a nation state, for reason of costs, of software engineering, etc. So it's very probably that actual autonomous agents will be developed and used by nation states, first of all. That's only a speculation anyway, so it can be confuted anytime. So use ad bellum. The problem, some consideration on autonomous agents is the problem of agency. It has the attributability of individual content to a state. As an autonomous agent will act to a point independently, we should ask ourselves in the future, or better, the legal advisor should ask themselves if the notion of individual acting as a state agent should be extended to software autonomous agents. And also, a way probably should be found to distinguish if a software agent is to consider civilian or military, and to which country it belongs to in the future. Drones, for instance, carry national marks. Should software do that too? If ever an international treaty on cyber warfare will be signed, should it contain provision for identification of autonomous agents, maybe through mandatory signature, hashing, watermarks, or maybe in the future should an UN agency will be established controlling autonomous agents? That's problems and consideration that will have to be addressed. I mean, in the next decade, I'm sure of that. And also proportionality. When a nation state decides to use force to defend itself, law says that the level of force used should be no more than what is necessary to repel the threat. Again, in the case of a genuine autonomous agent, care should be taken that the command and control function clearly states the agent's targets and rules of engagement, building in appropriate safeguards, for instance, with the overruling rule of engagement. And coming to use in bello, there is the question of targeting and discrimination. To be legal as a weapon, autonomous agents will need targeting, precise targeting, and discrimination. Precise targeting maybe should not be difficult for computational agents, because we can specify coordinates, for instance, with IP addresses or geographical locations or something like that. That's only an idea for now. Much more difficult for physical ones. An automated drone will have to decide from itself if attack a certain target or not. One possible solution, technical solution, could be classification techniques, but it's only a proposal at this stage. And concluding, beware. All the technological preconditions for AAs are in place. And my opinion is they would be considered a force enhancer and would make offensive operations even more attractive than they are now in cyber. Anonymity will be enhanced, and attribution problem will be still more difficult. To attribute an attack carried out by an autonomous agent will be very difficult. Further research is obviously needed, both on the technical side, the legal side, and the policy side. Policy is missing there, but it should be there. We're working on a possible implementation of an autonomous agent using AI techniques. I hope to present that next year. And also on further developing the modes in which such agents could be deployed. On the legal side, all the legal persons and advisors, I guess we'll, in a few years, we'll have to address these concerns. And more work will need to be done on how agents would fit into contexts other than a full-fledged armed conflict, where a jus ad bellum is not applied, and in a whole spectrum of cyber activities. From a doctrinal point of view, command and controls procedures should be established and rules of engagement to address all the legal concerns and also the practical concerns. And with this, I thank you very much for your time, and we are at the end.
Do you want to take a few questions?
Yeah.
Yes, if there are any.
We have
over there.
9 minutes.
If in a conflict you have autonomous agents or autonomous drones or autonomous tanks, how do you achieve a ceasefire or peace if your weapons continue fighting?
Yeah, that's a problem. I didn't address it here because of concert times, but into the command and controls rules of engagement, there are some sort of a kill switch to reclaim, in a way, the agent.
If there's command and control, how is it autonomous?
That's an open problem. I mean, I don't have the answer right now. They will be used because they are useful. They will be useful. And that's one of the big problems. How do we recall it once an autonomous agent has been deployed? Honestly, I don't have an answer right now.
Question over there.
I'm over here. Thank you for the really interesting talk. You presented 6 levels of agency in your definition, and I think you might be missing one that's really pretty vital, and that is that an agent, an artificial agent, would have to have a self-reflexive goal-developing behavior, meaning that it should be able to have goals about its own goals and knowledge about knowledge it might be missing. And without this, what you're developing is a semi-autonomous agent, which might lead to situations like the last speaker was talking about. Yes,
that's correct. That's an ulterior layer that maybe I didn't detail very much, but it should be. An autonomous agent should have actually goals about goals. Maybe goals about goals are incorporated in their so-called briefing for the mission. So the statute of limitation on its goals, on its targets, etc., they can be seen, in my opinion, also as part of the briefing, what you instruct them to do.
Mike Schmidt from the United States Naval War College. I just have one comment and then a couple of very brief questions. The first comment is I'm not sure I agree with your contention that the jus ad bellum applies only to actions by states. Certainly, it is the position of the United States that non-state actors can engage in an armed attack to which a state can respond under Article 51 of the Charter, and that would seem to be very relevant here. But my 2 brief questions are, I'm not sure I understand why whether the agent is civilian or military matters in the ad bellum context, because the issue is usually whether or not the actor is an organ of the state, not whether it's military or civilian. And then I was caught by your comment on proportionality, that it's important to identify, to improve the identification of the targets, because that's usually an issue of the jus in bello, not the jus ad bellum, because the jus in bello is the body of law that deals with harming civilians.
First of all, let me say that I defer to Professor Schmidt on international law matters. Maybe the distinction between military and civilian is a bit oversimplified, but I was meaning exactly what Professor Schmidt said. I mean, the attributability to a state. Maybe I was limiting myself to military because the most obvious, but the concept was that we have to distinguish if the activity of an agent is attributable to a state or not, whether it is military or civilian. Okay, you're right. And the second one about proportionality,
whether that's in bellow or odd bellow.
I think that I wrote in bellow, but maybe I was wrong. Let's see. No, you're right. I was talking in the use of force in self-defense, in the Article 51 sense. So maybe if a state has justification to use force in self-defense, initiating a conflict, in that sense, it's ad bellum.
Maybe I can just explain my comment. Proportionality in the odd bellum sense is whether you're using too much force to defend yourself. Identification of a target, which is what your slide says, is critical in regard to the use in bello because you have to be able to identify the target to know whether the damage is caused to civilians or to military objectives.
If I can see again the slide, please. Okay, this is the use ad bellum proportionality. The level of force used in self-defense should do more than is necessary to repel the threat. And the other one is use in bello, precise targeting and discrimination. Okay? Thank you, Professor Schmidt. Okay.
Just perhaps one additional, or Mr. Guarino is going to be at the panel this afternoon, so there will be more opportunity for questions. Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Thanks
for
again
this.